Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the SilentPunt Podcast. I'm your host, Henny Himmons. Travis, our co-host, is not here this week. Last I heard, he is somewhere in Orchard Park, New York, possibly under a broken white folding table in the parking lot of the Buffalo Bills football stadium. He'll be back with us next week. But this week, we're really excited to have a guest with us for an interview. Brian Henesey is an old friend from a long time ago that is joining us. He's a former NFL football player, also started his own business, strength and speed conditioning, and parlayed that into a couple of products that he created and patented and is selling now. The Squat Max MD and the Henny attachment. I'm not receiving any funds from that. His last name again is Henesey. But Brian's a super high achiever, also super humble. I hope you learned something a little bit from our talk and enjoy some of his stories as well. And without further ado, here we go. Brian, welcome to Silent Punt. How you doing?
My pleasure. My pleasure, Coach.
Well, it's been a long time. Brian helped me very much when I was a youngster with lifting, and he's still working in that regard. We're going to go through your story a little bit. One of the first things that came to my mind that I didn't know about you, well, I knew you went to Bucknell. I knew when you left, you were the all-time leading rusher there. But for those that are listening and don't know, Bucknell is very kind of like Radnor High School, mainliney, and at least in my own brain, little Ivy-ish type smart kids, not exactly Philly kids. How was that experience for you?
Um, you know, it, haven't been able to go to a mainline high school.
Yeah.
It was I had plenty of experience, and I actually preferred a smaller campus. Having grown up in the city for most of my life, like it was actually I wanted to be as far as I could from a city. So Bucknell, from an academic perspective, and being 3 hours from anywhere, covered being out in the country. And obviously, we're both ex-football players that tried to get the most out of our careers. It was the best option for me to play Division I AA at the time because I didn't have a lot of colleges banging down the door to recruit me.
Yeah, that is a familiar story for myself. And like I mentioned, you left after 4 years as the all-time leading rusher in school history. And I know in a couple of years what happened to you, and I'll ask you that story in a second. But between then and your graduation, what were you doing?
Well, I actually was fortunate enough to get a job right out of college. I think I started at the end of June. So I pretty much started 2 or 3 weeks after graduating. I went into the clinical research area, drug development. So I was very fortunate that Philadelphia is kind of was a hotbed. It still is, but especially in the early 90s for biotech and small pharmaceutical companies. So my initial job was what's called a clinical research associate. So I basically a lot of traveling. So and I also spoke a little bit of Spanish at the time. So
Hmm.
the role had me. I would monitor research studies, clinical studies that would be they would be anywhere in the country, actually anywhere in the world, because you would have to find the right patients, the right patient population for whatever study you're working on. So that was my initial role. I was actually probably traveled 15 cities every month, and it wasn't leisure travel. It was kind of one city, and I'd be on the plane at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock that night going to the next city. A typical routine for me. Now they have regional positions. This is early on in the early 90s. A typical week for me would be sometimes Seattle, San Francisco, San Diego to Mexico City. that would be 4 cities, including an international cities in 5 days, and then recover over the weekend and do it again on Monday or Tuesday. And I know we're going to get into my real aspiration to be an NFL football player, but I bring that up early because you can imagine it was going to be hard to stay in shape when when you're traveling at that pace.
Well, that you hit on my next question because I was going to ask you after this question to go into your story with Buddy Ryan and whatnot. But first, we have to back like, how do you stay in NFL caliber shape doing that job?
Yeah, I shake my head till this day. My son just graduated college. He was the punter at Lafayette College, and he's taking a gap year before he goes to medical school. He's working as a scribe. I'm like, you have it easy staying in shape. Let me tell you about my routine. No, it was. I still don't know how I did it, Henny. It was literally. I could write a book. Maybe I can hire you to help me do this. It was literally things that if we put into chapters, people wouldn't believe. I would get up at 6 a.m. in a hotel. I'd be in a hotel with regular business people. Especially if I was somewhere cold like Des Moines, Iowa, or somewhere in the winter. I would literally be running 20-yard dashes in the hallway of the hotel. Because it was carpeted. Of course, there was cement under there, but the carpet gave it a little bit of cushion and people would come out of the hotel at 7 in the morning, see a 215-pound guy running full speed by them. But yeah, everything from I remember my airplane getting stuck in Chicago O'Hare. There were thunderstorms, so we were on the runway for like 2 hours. I would sweet talk the stewardess, which would be a problem now with after 9/11. Obviously, this is pre 9/11, but I remember they closed the curtain for me, and I would be doing 400, 500 push-ups over that hour period, down, at the back of the airplane behind the curtain. So yeah, there's so many stories like that. Uh, and this went on, I graduated in 1992, June. I wouldn't actually get my tryout until, I guess it was around March, April 94. So about 2.5 years, going from Division I AA, trying to stay in shape. You as a football coach and a former player, it doesn't seem possible. But there's obviously a lot of stories in between of how I even got a tryout. I guess is what we'll get into next.
Yeah. So why don't you tell everybody? So it's a 2-year process that winds up with you being a member of the Arizona Cardinals. Let everybody know exactly how that transpired.
Yeah, I never gave up on this dream. I mean, I wasn't even an all league player my senior year at Bucknell. We were 1-9. I think I might have been honorable mention. I'm not even sure if I was that. So pretty much, there was no chance of this ever happening. I would tell colleagues, old friends, I'm going to make it to the NFL. Just looked like the guy that couldn't hang up the cleats. But during this time, I would send, I fortunate at my company, my research company, the guy that worked for you that worked in our mail department room at UPS. He actually played football at Fordham. He played against me. This was his first job out of college. He became a top financial guy, but his initial thing was working in the mailroom facilities, and he would help me send a lot of my old game film. I would send it out to New York Giants, Eagles, mostly focused on the East Coast where I had a striking distance. I don't know if they ever got it or ever looked at it. And I would send faxes and different things. And there were some camps, not even pay for play camps. Some of these, I forget what they were called. You're probably familiar with them, where you would go and they would get some numbers on you, a 40-yard dash and this, that, and the next thing. So I would chase those camps and try to get some numbers in the system, but it wasn't happening. There was no chance this was ever going to happen, probably. And then I'm driving in the car with my fiance, my wife now. Um, I remember like it was yesterday. I heard on the local sports radio, Buddy Ryan was just hired in Arizona. And the way I played football is I was a blue collar. Like I tried to run everybody over. I had more more tenacity than I had skill probably. But I got down. I ran a 4.55. I did some impressive things. But there was no chance. No one's going to give a free agent from Bucknell 2.5 years removed a shot. But so I immediately start sending him the same routine, film, faxes, and this is, I think he probably got hired in like December or January that in 1994. But by March, I'm not hearing anything. I'm like, it's now or never. I'm going to go literally fly out here and camp outside the Cardinals headquarters till he gives me a tryout or calls the cops. It, it was the last desperate move. Um, but before I went out there, I needed to know he was actually going to be in town, right? Because I'm using frequent flyer miles. I'm trying to get out here. I called the receptionist, and I did so much in my job. I had to constantly send research data. Back then, it wasn't electronic data. It's not like it is now. We had to send paper, what's called case report forms. So I dealt with Federal Express a lot. So I called up the headquarters. I said, I'm with Federal Express. We got a person-to-person delivery for Coach Buddy Ryan. So that's how I knew he was going to be there. That Friday or whatever day it was. So that's how it was launched. I had a special delivery. So I literally got out there, spent a day, scouting out the area, sitting in the parking lot. People wondering who this guy is sitting. And eventually, I worked my way into the lobby, and I wasn't sure how it was going to go. I was very fortunate. As I'm sitting there, I don't know if I saw a media guide or I don't, because you couldn't Google anything. So they're
Yeah,
even
right.
trying to find the headquarters. There wasn't GPS. Like much, I don't know how I pulled it off because I had traveled so much. But I went into the lobby and I just remembered sports specifics like strength coaches. Our first strength coach at Bucknell wasn't even hired till my sophomore year. Like the strength coach wasn't a thing except at the very top of Division One. But for somehow I remembered that our strength coach that was hired had did a seminar or a speed workshop, some kind of workshop with the Cardinals defensive coordinator Ronnie Jones. Ronnie Jones was actually a strength coach with the Eagles. That's how Jeff Connors had interacted with him at the workshop. But now, under this new Cardinals regime, Buddy hired him as a defensive coordinator. So I'm like, shit. Maybe I'll ask. I'll ask if I can talk to the defensive coordinator Ronnie Jones, and that worked out. Somehow the receptionist, I wasn't sure how he was going to take it. I'm like, this is why I'm here. I know I can play. I'm a Buddy Ryan type player. Blah blah blah. I know I can run a 4.5. I got this game film with me. I know if Buddy looks at it, he'll see how I run. That he'll like it. And Ronnie's like, I'll take the tape. And I'm not sure, how's this going to go because I've been chasing this for 2.5 years. You don't even get, acknowledgments from these teams. So the next morning I'm back early, sitting in the lobby, and Buddy Ryan walks in, have this whole thing rehearsed, and all I could say was "Good morning, Coach," as he goes into his office. But I think it was a good thing because if I had jumped Buddy Ryan, if he had got up on the wrong side of bed, hadn't had his coffee, I don't know how it would have went. So half hour goes by after he went in. The receptionist says, "Hello, Coach Buddy Ryan wants to see you." I'm like, "How is this happening?" Right? So obviously I'm scared to death. My heart's coming through my neck, and I walk into his office, and I remember like it was yesterday. He says, "So what brings you here, son?" And he knew. Fortunately, he had watched. He actually spent the time to look at the game film with Ronnie Jones before he called me back. But I said, I know I can play in this league, blah blah blah. I said, and if I cover kickoffs for you, I'll run down and rip someone's head off in your honor. He loved that, right? So somehow he said, well, we saw enough in that film. I want to work you out. So my bluff had been called. So about an hour later, I'm on the Cardinals, facility, ready to run a 40-yard dash. Amazingly, like I said, I ran a good time. Like it was on grass, like in the 4.5s. Did some other good things. Had me catch the ball, and within about 2 hours, I got a physical, and I was signing a contract. Obviously the contracts in the NFL aren't guaranteed, especially for me. But to be able to get a contract to go to camp you never think you could pull this off. It was like hitting the lottery. But I literally had to fly home and come back. This is probably on a Friday, on Monday, because he wanted me to be there for off-season workouts, which, this is probably, like I said, it's probably late March, April. So that I would go on and somehow went through camp, didn't get cut through like most people thought I'd be cut the first day. The first preseason game against the 49ers, he gives me the ball. He has me going in the second quarter, gives me like 12 carries. I have like 90 yards rushing, running people over. Like it was, you couldn't believe it. And then made it through the camp, and was on the opening day roster against LA. I guess it was LA Rams at the Coliseum. And then I always had a lot of bad luck while there was good luck. After the first game, my dad had some serious health issues. I got a call that he probably wouldn't be living when I got home. He had congestive heart failure and some major complications. So I finally make it, and I have to tell Buddy, hey, coach, I can't believe this, but my dad's probably going to be dead when I get home. I'm going to leave the team. And amazingly, I'm nobody. I wasn't even playing special teams. I made that team just as a backup running back. That's how well I performed as a running back. But he's like, you know what? I will hold your position. I'll keep a spot on the practice squad if you want to come back, when you're ready to come back. Fortunately, my dad recovered, and I came back, a week or two later, and was on the practice squad for about 4 or 5 games, and then I got the itch again. I'm doing good in practice. Jim McMahon's he's the backup quarterback, so we're running the scout offense. He's like, you need to be playing. So I called another meeting with Buddy. I said, Buddy, I know I can help. We're getting ready to play the Eagles in like a week. I said, like I told you when you gave me the tryout, I would love to rip someone's head off in your honor. We go down, cover kickoffs. So I didn't know what he was going to do. I went home. I had this meeting. This was on like a Monday. Tuesday's the off day in the NFL. I think it was a Tuesday off day before the Eagles. So I'm home in my apartment eating my Pizza Hut pizza, hanging on, and I get a call from a reporter. I hadn't even talked to Buddy. He's like, hey, what do you think? Do you have any comment? We hear that you're going to be returning kickoffs. Like, oh no, it was the Steelers. It was Tuesday before the Steelers. He's like, we hear you're going to be returning kickoffs against the Steelers on Sunday Night Football on TNT. I'm like, geez, I didn't even return kickoffs in high school because I had such terrible hands. So this wasn't. I was supposed to cover the kickoff. So you can imagine I'm shitting a brick, right? So Wednesday, the poor kicker, Greg Davis. I'm like, Greg, I need you to kick me like 200 balls. Because I know I can run with the ball. I know I wasn't worried about running with the ball. I just knew I needed to catch the ball. So poor Greg's legs hanging off. You're not going to believe it. I always had bad back issues, even in college. On Thursday, running a kickoff, I blow my back out. And my back's so bad, when I hurt my back, I know we're going to get into my career changes, and I'll get through this pretty quickly. I throw my back out, and I can't even walk. But I'm going to play on Sunday. Like, it was the hardest thing I ever did. So he activated me. I had to, even though I was in not great shape, I actually got an epidural in my spine right before the game. I was able to get it on my own. They didn't even share it with the team. I did pretty good on kickoffs that he kept me as the kickoff returner for the following week against the Eagles. So my back would eventually get pretty bad, that it would impact the season, and I would kind of go on like an IR practice squad. But I pulled that off and was able to get another make it to another camp with the Philadelphia Eagles the year before. I'll stop talking. I know we want to get into different career moves, but that that's the story, believe it or not. You as a coach,
Definitely.
I can't. I know you have a great appreciation of it as a small college player and a small and a coach.
Yeah, I mean it's almost unbelievable, like to people now, how the world works and how those things works. And um, but I mean, I just being from Philly, you hear all the stories about Buddy Ryan. It's certainly not outside the realm of what you would think someone like Buddy would do. Um, I do want to move on, but are there any anecdotes or stories that stand out to you the most of that year with Buddy and the Cardinals?
Um, I mean, there's so many. I guess the initial thing that comes to mind is some of the guys on that team: Aeneas Williams, who's a Hall of Fame, in the Hall of Fame now. Larry Sanders, who's knocking Hall of Fame. Andre Waters, God bless his soul, like who I loved with the Eagles. Seth Joyner, all these guys. Like even though I was just a walk on, basically some scrub from the middle of nowhere, like how well they treated me, like obviously I did run over a linebacker here and there during camp to earn some of that respect, but just having, because you hear there's good people and, sometimes you think we're pro athletes, they're a different breed, spoiled, but, just like in every, because we're going to talk about my different work career and where I've been, there's amazing, good human people, no matter what, what business you're in, even pro business. There's a lot of stories that we definitely have to meet up again when I'm close, because there's so many buddy stories that some of them they're still hard to believe. One of my favorites, just because it's funny, is and then I'll leave it at that. We just played a preseason game in Denver. I had a pretty good game, and Buddy's at the front of the bus handing out beers, and I don't drink. I'm straight as arrow, but I was just about to say, hey, buddy, I don't drink, but I heard I can't trust it. I heard him say, I can't trust a man that doesn't have a beer. I said, buddy, give me two of those. So, yeah, but
Whatever
yeah,
it takes.
so there were so many, there's so many characters. Like I said, Jim McMahon, who was, if that alone could be a sitcom, him doing spell check on the offensive coordinator, before practice, all kinds of crazy things. But yeah, a lot of stories for sure.
I've heard a couple of stories about Jim McMahon from his time at Westchester and training camp in Philly, so I'm sure
Oh,
there's
that's right. Yep.
plenty of those. Um, okay, so your career ends in the NFL, and you've mentioned your back before, but share with the listeners just maybe a brief history of what your back problem was.
Yeah, I got hit by a car as a child when I was about 11 years old, and I had aches and pains in my back. To put in perspective, I got a cortisone injection in the guidance counselor's office at Radnor High School on a Friday so I could play on Saturday. So the back was always an issue. It would get progressively worse by the time I was a junior, senior at Bucknell. Every eighth game it would just go out. I had massive herniated discs, like pretty massive. Sometimes they would suck back in. This eventually ended. It cost me a lot of games. Obviously, when Eagles cut me, to be honest with you, I'm not sure if I would have made it through, because of the damage I had done the year before. But this would culminate, like long after I was done football in like 2003. The herniated disc, one of them actually got so bad. There's something called cauda equina syndrome. I had a spinal cord injury. It actually became a spinal cord injury. You have to get surgery. This is like one in a million people with herniated disc get this, and you got to get surgery within like 24 hours. But I had hurt my back so much, I had numbness, genital numbness, all these things going on. I'm like, I just hurt my back. I'll have to just lay on the floor and miss work. But I went 3 days before I went to the emergency room, and went in to go to the bathroom. I fell back, split my head open. I was becoming paralyzed. They actually, after the surgery, isn't that big of a deal. It's just a race against the clock. So after that, I had foot drop. I still have some foot drop. Like if you see me when I'm tired, I have a lot of atrophy on my left side. But when I left that hospital, they didn't think I would be able to walk without assistance. So I'm doing great. But so after I got cut by the Eagles in '94, I went back to what I knew and did clinical research. I no longer could travel. Fortunately, I moved up a little bit. I didn't have to travel so much. I actually got a job at Wyeth, which was kind of a Fortune 500 pharmaceutical company that was right across from Radnor High School. So in that Philadelphia area, and I had a role called clinical scientist, and fortunately I got my master's while after I went back to work in like 97, 98. I got a master's from Temple School of Pharmacy. So was moving up the career path. I made it to a director at Wyeth, which is a pretty good accomplishment. It's I'm not upper management, but I'm a couple rungs up. And my wife also worked at Wyeth with me. She was getting her PhD, and I actually brought her into Wyeth. But so I was there. I got cut by the Eagles in '95, and then went right back to work. And then I was at Wyeth, which eventually was taken over by Pfizer in 2009. So from 1995 to 2009, what is that? 14 years. Working my way up the corporate ladder, knowing that I always wanted to get back and train athletes. That was kind of my dream that one day I could take what I learned, because I always had the back problems. I didn't train like most of you white fullbacks trained. I had to work around things. Like I didn't power clean, I didn't deadlift. Um, Sorry, I lost you for a second. Can you see me?
I can see you. Yep.
Hopefully you can see me. Yeah, I'm having a problem with this email popping up. Yeah, we're still here, Henny. So I was fortunate in 2009, after Pfizer took us over, they were going to give me a chance to take a package. My wife is still at Pfizer. She's a vice president. She's doing well. So I don't want to. For me to make a career change, I wasn't risking everything because I had an income at Pfizer to fall back on. But my midlife crisis in 2009, once Pfizer came around, was to open up a gym to train athletes. My son was 7 at the time, and my daughter was 9. So I'm like, Caroline, that's my wife. I'm like, even if this thing is terrible, it sucks. At least I'll get to train our own 2 kids. So no one knows a Rudy type guy that made it to the NFL in 94, 95. I'm opening up a gym, in King of Prussia, which you're very aware of, is a popular spot. It's a great location. But my whole MO is I'm going to help train kids to be more athletic, get faster. And then, a startup company, I don't know how it's going to go, but amazingly, it ended up being a success. I was in business at the gym, just to show you how long we lasted. 2009, I sold it to my lead assistant coach in 2022. So 13 years. And I love telling this story. In 13 years, we had over 500 athletes go on to play their sport in college. But here's the one, Henny. We had 20 athletes go on to play their sport professionally. So these are kids that started with me in 8th grade. These weren't, I wasn't cherry picking for the NFL combine to get kids that trained under their college coach. Like, I'm excited. There's a couple of them still playing today. The Toronto Blue Jays. Check Brendan Littlewell from Conestoga. He's a reliever. Mikal Bridges, obviously the great Villanova basketball player. There's a bunch of them still out there, but it was pretty amazing to take my formula that had helped get me to the NFL. A lot of single leg training, a lot of plyometrics, my own kind of system. I was a research scientist, as we discussed, so I'm very data driven. So it was pretty cool when I launched this gym. I had 6 or 7 what I call indicators, like things even like relative body strength, how well you can control your own body weight. I would use a pull up. So it wasn't anything. It was so novel. This is a funny story to your love, since we're in MLB playoff time. Raul Banez had just got let go by the Phillies. This is 2012. His last. So I'm in business like 2 years, and I know we're going to get into my belt squat. That's my other business that came from the gym. But Raul comes into my gym, and he's like, the Phillies let him go. Everyone thought he was done because he was 40 years old. So he had all the top trainers in the world, and he wanted me just to follow his program. And I'm from his top guy in Miami. There's a real popular guy in Miami that trains all the athletes. I'm like, I'm not following that guy's program, but let me get a 20-yard dash on you. And Raul ran a bad time. I'm like, you're slow as a schoolgirl, Raul. But the good news is I can get you faster. Like, he should have punched me in the face. This the guy created, had 300 home runs, 2,000 hits, but he loved it, right? So he's like, all right, I'm going to work with you. We didn't know if he was going to sign with anyone, but we worked together. He goes, these numbers don't mean anything, but just to put it in perspective, his 20-yard dash hand time was like a 2.85, which isn't very good for an outfielder in Major League. He got down. He improved 3/10 of a second in his 20. This isn't a 40 or 60. 3 times in 20 over like 3 months. It was unbelievable. He said he had done a lot of great things. I'm not saying if he would have came to me as a weak, he was a human muscle. He just needed to train a certain way. So he went on, signed with the Yankees, and they were just signing him as a DH, but he was moving so well. There were some injuries. He actually ended up playing full time in the outfield and had like 25 home runs for the Yankees that year. Then he signs with Seattle because he did so well with the Yankees. He was able to go back to Seattle, and we got round 2 of our training. I said, we're going to be really good this year because this is our second year doing this training. He ties a major league record, most home runs for a player over 41 years old. He hits 29 home runs. So I'm getting goosebumps. You can't make this stuff up. So pretty cool that even the couple pros that came through had a good experience. And then my big thing out of the gym was I ended up patenting 2 pieces of exercise equipment, two novel types movements. It's not rocket science. Just because of my own back problems, I knew that like there's things out there like Smith machines. I wanted to create a way where I could do max effort squats. Still wanted it to be the same efficacy that you get with a back squat. Works your glutes. It's a multi-joint movement. So I created my own contraption, which is now called Squat Max MD. That's now being used in over 40 countries worldwide. It's a free. I was able to maintain the benefits of a free weight movement. But what I love about it is just like my Arizona Cardinal days, how I got a tryout. When I created this, of course, I put in a patent, but I wanted to know that it behaved just like a barbell back squat. So I'm contacting all these colleges that do research studies, and I was fortunate that Widener University School of Physical Therapy once again called my bluff and was willing to come out and do a real pristine EMG research study where they compared squat max versus an actual barbell back squat to measure. And sure enough, the muscle activity was just like a barbell back squat. So it just gave me more, validity, validating that what I'm creating for my athletes. And I almost forgot, Raul loved this thing so much, he would use it under the dugout when he was DHing. He would go down and do 10 quick reps right before he hit. So people don't know this. I should be selling more of these. He did this right before he hit. Like, so it's just pretty cool when something you create that, it turns out this way, but it is a good device. My own back issues, like everyone says they feel better now than they did at 40 when they're trying to sell a product, like because of, my spinal cord injury, hip replacement, eight knee surgeries. Like I'm able to go max effort on this thing, and I honestly can tell you, it is. Raul called it the fountain of youth. It literally has been the fountain of youth, and it's endorsed by like Peter Attia. He's like the top longevity doctor. His podcast, like he's always on Joe Rogan. It's supported by the scientific people. There's a spinal biomechanics guy in in Canada. He's the number one spinal mechanics biomechanics guy in the world. He uses it in his own lab. So again, this wasn't the plan. Like, how did I pull this off? Right. So let's get into that. I guess is your next question. Like, how's a guy running a gym, training athletes, somehow going to now open up a gym equipment company and try to get it out there to the masses?
Well, I have a follow-up question before that, and that is, I'll preface it by saying, you remember Dick Vermeil, the old Eagles coach. There's a story that someone had asked his wife at some point in his coaching journey, and everybody remembers the Eagles, and then later on with the Rams and the Chiefs. But before that, he was a typical coach moving around and whatnot. And they asked his wife, how did you guys make all of these great decisions about this job to take and this job to take and this job to take? And as you know, when you're moving around and coaching, you're not taking a good job, you're taking a bad job. That's why somebody else got fired and you're there. But her response was, well, we never thought of it that way. We thought we're taking this and we're going to make something out of it. I'm wondering you're very humble, and you mentioned, when you left pharmaceutical stuff that you got a buyout package or whatnot, but that's a huge leap to go from doing that to not just running your own business, but running a business that you hadn't run before, all sorts of new stuff. I know you had talked about always wanting to do that, but what in you spurred you to make that choice?
I guess, everyone says, I'm not sure it's true anymore. If you do something you love, it won't be work. I guess I had nothing to lose. Like I said, I definitely want to preface this. I wasn't the sole income for my family. My wife had moved up to, she was a, director on her way to be a vice president type in regulatory. So for me, it wasn't, it was risky, obviously, because I could have moved on to another company and had a decent salary. Like, obviously there were some lean times that first 1 or 2 years trying, and I had no business sense, right? I was doing research. I wasn't even marketing. I have a lot more respect for marketing. I never liked marketing when I was a research scientist, but it's a large part of running a business. Even down to, I had a secretary at big pharma. So now I'm the guy that got to figure out how to make a website. So it was it was definitely a humbling experience. I guess, I had done, because I always got back, I was pretty consistent, like got a job right out of college. I'm not driving around. I'm not wearing my NFL gold chain when I made it. So I had always had, saved money and put money aside. And it just was the perfect timing that I had nothing to lose with that premise that at least I'm going to get, just like you're trying to be around your daughter, spend, this could lead to quality time to train my own two kids. And I don't know if you know the story. My poor daughter, she was the first. She's at Harvard now, getting her PhD in molecular biology. That's another thing. She had like 150 goals in high school soccer. She was my first Frankenstein monster, where I got to put this into an athlete. And she got a scholarship to Delaware. Her career was cut short. She was actually, believe it or not, run over by a car when we were on vacation in Florida. Terrible. Just remember, I got hit as a kid. She
Yeah.
was like literally on the grass. Some idiot hit and run driver. I don't know if they were drunk. It was during the day. Sent her flying 15 feet into like a grassy ditch. She broke both her legs and had some problems producing growth hormone, which is critical for recovery for an athlete. So it's a shame because she'd probably still be playing soccer, even though she was obviously smart. She's at Harvard now getting her PhD. Um, but yeah, that's a sad ending. But she was she was one of my first Frankenstein monsters. She was 9, and we're doing all this strength. She's doing all the soccer stuff, but we're doing top end speed sprint. So it was pretty cool because and I mentioned before we got on the call, my son he got a scholarship offer to Stephen F. Austin for baseball, but he chose the punt at Lafayette College because he's a biochem, 3.9 in biochem. So they take after their mother. So that having that as my background, the worst that could happen is I could lose, in a year or two, say, what the hell did I try to do? Maybe, it's time to grovel back and try to get some kind of job in the pharmaceutical industry again, or a research industry. But it worked out well. And then, like we mentioned, within the first 2 years of the opening up the gym, I created this belt squat device that I was running a patent. And again, think I was overwhelmed from a marketing perspective, trying to get local kids to come to my gym. I had no chance of getting this belt squat out there. Like I made all the, like, if I could go back in time and do it again, it would, but I wasted 4 or 5 years. It wasn't a waste because I continued to get data, continue to refine it, but I had no clue how to get it to, where it could be a marketed product. Like, you can, just like you're doing with some of the stuff where you're writing or whatever. Yeah, I can create a website. Don't mean anyone's going to come, right? It don't mean if you write something that someone's going to read. Like, I had no forum. I had no idea how to get there. And probably where I failed in business, I didn't want to spend my nest egg, my wife, for retirement. Like, I didn't want to put $300,000 into, you know, some kind of mass marketing campaign that might not work anyway. But I'm
Yeah,
finally 10 years into it.
yeah, you're in those positions you don't know, and the last thing you want to do is make a decision that hamstrings you, and you can't do what you want to do in terms of marketing it. That was one of the huge questions that I had. I did not realize that you started the development of the Squat Max ND that early in your time owning the gym. Was that just something that you were following your interest to do, or did you have in your back of your mind, hey, this is something that I think I can sell eventually?
Yeah, I tell people all the time. It really had no. I wasn't that good. I wasn't Larry Bird 3 steps ahead. It literally was. I wanted to maximize a squat because in my program, the years I couldn't back squat because my own bad back problems, my vertical, like I was a 38-inch vertical jump when I was right, when I was able to squat and do what I could do. When I was forced to use a leg press and different things, I wasn't the same athletic player. So it was for my own athletes originally. But when Raul's, when he leaves for the Yankees, within a week or two, he's like, "Hey, I need to get one of these down with the Yankees." I'm thinking, man, I'm going to take off now. And then they mentioned it in like the sporting news. I'm like, I don't have to do anything. This thing's going to sell itself. Not the case. 5, 6 years later, I was still toiling, going nowhere. I mean, I had the really big break for my business wasn't something that I created, that I did. It would just happen to be, I had like 1,000 followers on Instagram at the time. Not that I have 1 million now, but I had like 1,000. One of the top power lifters in the world, Blaine Sumner. He back squats 1,100 pounds. He was a Division II football player, college of the mines. Just a phenomenal athlete. He did like 225 for like 70 reps, like on the bench press, like just a different animal. But he had back problems, and just like all of us that are chasing, whether it's you're a power lifter chasing to be the best in the world at his sport, whatever, me chasing what I was doing in football, somehow he stumbles upon my account, which nobody stumbles upon, and he sees my device. And he's actually an engineer by trade. He's a smart guy. He saw right off what I saw with my back problems. It was a vertical line of drive. so it pulled straight down on your hips. Where there's now other belt squats out there. People do it on a lever arm. They're like, it's the dumbest thing in the world to me with back pain, that I'm gonna have something that's gonna shear. Like sometimes for people with bad backs like me, it's not the compression. It's the shear, like reaching down to pick some shear stress is terrible. So he found this, and he got one from me, and they were big bulky things because I was using a local fabricator in Pennsylvania. It's now much more streamlined, but he wanted one ASAP. He used it and posted on Instagram. I was up to like 10,000 followers within like a couple months, and then he broke a world record and credited the Squat Max. And then it was so if I could go back in time, I would have searched influencers to send this machine to. But he was an influencer, but it wasn't. He was a real influencer. Like he's a legitimate, world renowned power lifter. So that was the first big break, and that helped me understand with my other product, which we'll talk about soon, the Henny attachment, how I would try to be a little different, a little bit more aggressive in how I got that out there.
The was that a problem for you when he did that? Were you prepared? I would imagine that increased some sales and some visual to your.
Yeah.
Is that a challenge?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's another thing, because I made everything local. Like that's the other thing. I was a really good research scientist. I learned so much. I came up from the very bottom and so now I didn't fabricate, right. So I had to. So now I'm opening up another business where I don't weld, I don't fabricate. So
Right.
yeah, to answer your question, yeah, because there was more demand, right. I was kind of putting my toe in there where I'd make 10 at a time. And these are expensive. I was making them in the US. So at a certain point, instead of making 10 at a time, I had to make, and it's scary, right? Because these are $1,000 a piece or more to make with all the parts. So you order 100 of these things, it's $100,000. And you don't know, maybe you're crazy, no one's going to buy them. So, there's a lot of, I guess anyone that's an entrepreneur has to take that leap. I mean, I was willing to give up my career to go after the NFL, but when you're 40 years old, survived a spinal cord injury, have two young kids, and my wife had some health issues early on. She actually was diagnosed with cancer when she was pregnant with my son. She had stage 4 Hodgkin's, so she had to get chemo while she was pregnant. So very fortunate. She actually got breast cancer a few years after that from the radiation treatment, but they caught it so early. So she's doing great. So all those things weigh in your mind, like you said, when you're going a career change, like things can change on a dime. So there's definitely some of that stuff that you have to put into the equation. But getting back to the machines, yeah, it made me go from ordering 10 and now I'm ordering 100. Now I need warehouse space because these things are big, bulky. They ship freight. So I'm training athletes. I'm running, like, fortunately during the school year, I could pull it off because athletes are like a 3 to 7, 3 to 8 window. So then I would go and pack these machines up, hope the freight company shows up and picks them up. But yeah, so it's come a long way since then. Obviously, it got popular enough where I was able to license the IP. So there's now 2 companies making it, and it's I'm I'm half retired, Henny. Don't feel bad for me because I sold the gym business and I'm able to collect royalty payments on the machine. And I have the other product is so small, you might even be able to see some. I got the lights off, but I actually have my warehouse right in my house here. So my other product ships UPS ground. So it's that's pretty much what I do. I pack them during the morning and then go work out for an hour or two. So
That away. And your oddly enough, your newest product, you got the t-shirt on, is the Henny.
Yep.
There
Yep.
we
Yep.
go.
I named that after you, as you know.
I'm still awaiting my royalty checks, but that's all right.
Yeah, that's it. I remember you contacting me. I said to my wife, I said, damn, Henny wants his cut. But yeah,
Oh,
it's that product is it's when I was getting ready, one of the weaknesses I had preparing for the NFL is, the squats, the bench press, the traditional stuff. It's 90% of what you have to do, but there's certain movements, especially, going into camp against the Eagles, the name drop, you're going in as a 219-pound fullback, and you have to pick up Bill Romanowski, who's crazy and 260, 265 probably. So the Henny was born out of when I started training these athletes. I credit a lot of my athletic success is because I threw so much stuff in the equation. I was like that was even as a kid. I would try different things. I credit a lot of my speed growing up in the city. There was always someone trying to beat me up or catch me or whatever it was. So I tried to duplicate. Like even people laugh at me. I tell the story sometimes to people in the city. There were a lot of dogs. I know it's crazy. A lot of abandoned dogs, wild dogs. So inevitably you get bit in the ass growing up in the city. These dogs chase you. I would always try to or run around a car, do circles around a car to get away from the dog or to get away from the 16-year-old trying to beat me up when I was 13. So I brought all this stuff into the gym where I would create a circle and have suburban kids chase because it really taught me to play on the edges of my feet. Even at Bucknell, not to go back, is some of those other running backs were just as strong as me, but I got more athletic, and I would that's where I got some of my ideas. Like I would do because my grandfather was a professional boxer in the 30s. My dad was a street fighter that would stay in shape, so I always knew like pull ups and push ups. They were just strictly doing heavy weights where I would do body weight stuff and I would do different things. So the Henny was my way to after 5 or 6 years into the gym, I have trouble getting athletes into that, that vertical, that shin angle, that positive shin angle, like body angles, teaching a female athlete to sink her hip when she tries to decelerate, she needs to sink her hips. So the Henny is just a system of straps, heavy duty nylon straps that hold 4,000 pounds. And it's almost like a jammer arm, but it's same thing. It's omnidirectional. So it works your stabilizers. It's not like a fixed machine. So I've taken this simple idea and created like probably 4 dozen exercises that actually helped me get kids faster. But going back to the female athletes, the ACL tears in high level high school athletes, especially females, it's like 40%. And I'm not making this stuff up, Henny. We had one ACL tear non-contact in 13 years at my gym, and I trained thousands of girls. And it's not. I'm not saying it's just the Henny. It's the plyometrics. It's everything that I did. But even squat max, when they did the research study, the VMO, which is that inner quad muscle that's so important for stabilizing the knee, that's like off the charts active when you do squat max. So it's pretty cool because that was my main squat movement for my female athletes. But yeah, the Henny, it looks simple, but it's pretty cool. It's being used by NFL teams now. I think I know Cleveland Guardians got eliminated. They have a Henny and a squat max. So yeah, it's just it seems simple, but there's a lot of thought to it. But going back to, because it's a horizontal force, I would have these girls when they're doing rows or doing certain movements, it would pull them. So if they didn't load their posterior chain, their glutes and their hamstrings, it would pull them over. So I could lose my voice trying to teach them to load the right muscles to be able to decelerate, where the Henny, it actually gave them that feedback that was priceless. So there's so many different things with it. If you ever get a chance, I don't know if you have a squat rack, I got to get you this offset press on it. It's the closest I've ever found to what it was like to pick up a linebacker. It just shredded your that cross that cross muscle. It's crazy. Like I feel it. I'm like, God, I wish I had this when I was getting ready for the Cardinals or the Eagles or even at Bucknell, because the lifting, you could hit a sled all day. The sled's letting you hit it. Where this has that same, like when you're picking someone up and you don't have a clean shot, that same, anterior sling, that oblique sling.
Yeah, that I'm going to put links in the email that this podcast goes out with into both of those products, but because it's really until if you're even if you're into working out and exercise, like seeing them is really impressive, and particularly the Henny. I've seen some similar-ish things to the Squat Max, but I've never seen anything like the Henny attachment, and just how it reminds me. My wife does some Pilates type X-esque stuff, and it reminds me a little bit of that, but then you're getting the weight added to it as well, which I've never seen the combination of both of those. Um, you've had kind of a crazy journey. Any last things about, if someone was watching this and they're thinking of maybe taking a chance on a career or taking a chance on a particular project, any words of wisdom over your 40 plus years of doing it?
Yeah, I wish I had something really, that wasn't cliche, but I just think you're only going through, you get one life, right? That's, I've been fortunate that, even as the youngest of five, I know you're fortunate with your parents and your dad. I was very fortunate to have a father, um, and a mother that pretty much taught me to, chase my dreams. Having grown up in a very blue collar town, like we didn't have much, but my dad always made. I wish he would have told me how terrible of a jump shot I had. I didn't realize how bad. Now that you can videotape everything, I thought I was Larry Bird, but he was so good he didn't even tell me when I stunk. But yeah, I was always able to carry that on. That what he taught me, that I could shoot higher, and I've taken that with me to be able to pursue the various careers, and having that, when you have someone that believes in you, and you as a coach, I think there's a quote I always butcher, like, I wasn't really that good. I wasn't that good, but my coach thought I was, kind of thing. Like, that's really really what that had allowed me to have success. That I was able to believe in myself because I had people that built that foundation, believing in me. So
Well, and then you gave back and did it to hundreds of other kids for them as well.
yeah, you just gave me goosebumps with that. That was the greatest thing, because the motto at Overachieve was, you don't have to be a blue chip, you just have to have a big chip.
Yeah.
That was really cool, because even the ones that didn't go pro, the ones that maybe just finished college, just being able to get that confidence, getting stronger coming into like that. Some of the best coaches, including your dad, like I was around so many good teachers and coaches, that's what I wanted to be. Do you know Jay McCrone? I don't know if you ever met Jay McCrone.
Uh,
He was an
I
old
recognize that name.
Radnor. Yeah, he was a Radnor Parks and Recreation director. He was a championship. He was a real high level power lifter. He's one of my first strength coaches. Got me into lifting. But he would build kids up like that. That's what was so great about this. The ability to, like you said, give back, because there were so many. There were so many high school, grade school coaches that were that positive in life. So yeah, so no regrets is the name of this book when you write it, my brother.
All right, dude. Careful what you wish for. Might be tracking you down again. Brian,
For
appreciate it, man.
sure. Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Henny.